With me is European Union's envoy on Indo Pacific. He's here in Delhi and has had number of meetings with the Indian officials and also with the EU envoys here in Delhi. So welcome to WION. And my first question, obvious question is, what brings you here in Delhi? What is your key focus during your Delhi visit?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me and thank you for seeing this interview. What brings me here is the actual step up the relations with India in terms of involvement of India in the implementation of the EU strategy for the Indo Pacific. So my contacts here are aimed not only at a political level and a comparison of notes on the current situation, on the current geopolitical situation, but also and above all to implement the EU strategy for cooperation on the Indo-Pacific, both bilaterally and regionally.
Mm-hmm. The EU strategy on Indo-Pacific, what is it all about? If you can help describe us about the strategy, and also where does there is an alignment when it comes to the Indian strategy on Indo-Pacific, how both are perhaps on the same page?
Well, first of all, let me say something in terms of names and labeling. The Indo-Pacific, the term Indo-Pacific, as you might know, was born in India itself in 2007. It was for the first time raised in a speech of Prime Minister Abe from Japan in front of the Indian Parliament. So the notion of Indo-Pacific was born in India. So already this is a great alignment because some people refer to the region in different ways. Like Asia-Pacific, we do both refer to it as Indo-Pacific. So there is already a first definition of the geographical scope which is aligned. The EU strategy for cooperation on Indo-Pacific aims at strengthening and reinforcing the already current ongoing cooperation which is ongoing in the Indo-Pacific. It is structured along 7 themes, all of which are already of very high importance to India. So we have a theme which talks about economic development and trade. We have another second theme which talks about climate change and fight against its effects. Another theme which is about cooperation on security and defense. Then on human security, which is all about fight against pandemics and reinforcement of the national health security services. Then we have the ocean governance as well with the fight against the pollution and illegal fishing and illegal smuggling and law enforcement. So, you know, this is an overall strategy which encompasses all the possible fields of interest to the area and to India itself. And we are really looking forward to, the biggest, which I left as last, a chapter on connectivity. Mm-hmm. The real backbone of the strategy is connectivity. And the implementation of its connectivity chapter is really at the very heart of our policy for India itself and for the region.
Mm-hmm. Any practical initiatives that have been announced, taken forward, discussed during your meetings here with the Indian officials, and what kind of these practical cooperations we expect, especially on connectivity, because this is something that has been a worry in a sense in the region?
Absolutely. It's a bit too early to identify concrete projects. We are still at the phase of agreeing on terms of cooperation. The European Union has specified its concept of connectivity through a policy initiative which is called Global Gateways, published towards the end of the year. What really aligns us very much with India on connectivity, which, by the way, India is one of the only 2 countries with whom the EU has a connectivity partnership. That's an important step to say. Well, the implementation of this global gateway and connectivity partnership will pass through identification of projects, but we are already very much aligned on the philosophy. And the philosophy of the EU's way to connectivity and the India understanding of connectivity is that projects should be based on their, we call them, bankability or financial sustainability in the long term. It means that the financing will be a blend of public-private subvention funds, involvement of financial institutions, be them private or public, like the national development agencies, but and also with a mix of loans and grants, so that the grants can, let's say, create a leverage for the private sector to chip in. So this is a way of going towards connectivity, which is very much in the interest of the recipient country, and it's based again on the long-term sustainability of the debt. And in this way, if you allow me, maybe one motto for this, our ideas of connectivity, which is shared with India and the EU, is that connectivity should create links and not dependencies.
That's a statement which has a lot of meanings to it. But talking about Ukraine, you're wearing a bow as well. Ukraine crisis is something that has been the biggest worry in global capitals, whether it's Delhi or Brussels or any other capital. Do you think this crisis is going to divert the European Union's emphasis on the Indo Pacific because of the war at the doorsteps of Europe?
Let me say that this is not a crisis. This is a drama which is going on. This is the first time after 75 years that war has touched the European soil, and it is at the neighbors of Europe. This is something that we all stood up against, and this paradoxically does not reduce at all the resolve of the EU to act in the Indo-Pacific. It enhances the EU's resolve to act, not only in the Indo-Pacific, but worldwide. What is happening there resonates all over the world. What is there is a big neighbor attacking a smaller neighbor in an unprovoked way, not respecting the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of a state. This all in total breach of the UN Charter, in breach of the international rules-based order, and in breach, allow me to say, on the rules we all gave each other to live peacefully. So we cannot pretend nothing has happened, but to come back to your question, this is something which reinforces our resolve to act even more in the Indo-Pacific, and this is something which has found very much attention from the Indian authorities as well during my talks yesterday.
You just talked about a bigger neighbor trying to trouble or create war when it comes to smaller neighbor, chipping away their territories. This is something we have seen in Asia as well. When it comes to Ukraine, do you see a similar kind of situation erupting in Asia? And if yes, what can the European Union do if something like that happens in the Indo-Pacific?
For the time being, nothing like that has happened, and for the time being, we have no signs that something like this will happen. Should this happen, anyhow, the Western world and the Western democracies, the liberal democracies, have shown that they can unite together to counteract this. And I think that the answer that the EU, its member states, and like-minded countries have given worldwide to the Ukrainian war has been exemplary to show what it means to breach the UN Charter.
So while you haven't taken the name of one country or a certain problem in the region, you have indicated parallels or perhaps bigger countries causing problem in the region. How big is that worry, a worry which you have put it in your own terms, for Europe at a time when the world is going through dramatic changes?
It's not a worry. You have to be ready for whatever the future might bring. And actually, there is something on which we all agreed, and if you allow me, this is not a diplomatic talk, it's to show the price tag for breaking the international rules-based order. And I think that the price tag has been shown. So there is no worries, there is no targets for anything. It's just an indication of the fact that the democracies as well can deliver and unite themselves when needs be.
So my last question to you is, you had conversations with the Indian side as well. What are your expectations from the Indian side when it comes to the Indo-Pacific? India has been a torchbearer essentially when it comes to the Indo-Pacific, but there must be some expectation that India can do this, or you can perhaps reach out to India at a certain level when it comes to issues, not only in the Indo-Pacific, but across the world.
Yes. I would not talk about expectations from India. I would really talk about the possibility of joining forces. I mean, India is the biggest democracy of the world, is the biggest regional power, both military and economic. So, of course, it's not a matter of having expectations, but it's a matter of cooperation and joining forces. And my presence here also this very week is an evidence of the fact that we want to engage more and more with India in order to really find ways of cooperating positively on every possible aspect. And there are tangible possible cooperation ideas which stem from connectivity, which we just mentioned, on defense, like joining, for example, undertaking joint exercises with the EU military missions in the Indian Ocean, or fighting the climate change, or capacity building on law enforcement, which would then promote multilateralism. For example, the UN Convention on Law of the Seas is something that see both the EU and India aligned. I could continue for many more minutes, but I don't want to bore you or your viewers, but I would really like to stress that we found ourselves very much aligned on the will to strengthen and cooperate even more.
So your comments do matter, and I'm pretty sure that your comments are being duly noted by our viewers. But additionally, talking about, are you planning some big ticket events? Because recently France did organize an Indo-Pacific meet in which we saw a lot of foreign ministers, including the Indian foreign minister. Does EU plans a big ticket event like this on Indo-Pacific that can see leaders coming together, perhaps at the leaders level?
Well, allow me to set things right. The Indo-Pacific Ministerial Forum was co-organized by the EU and the French. So it was an EU event as well. But of course, this was a major, and thanks a lot for reminding that, because we consider this as a major step forward for integrating the EU with the Indo-Pacific. In Paris, we had all the ministers of foreign affairs of the EU, plus more than 30 ministers for foreign affairs of the Indo-Pacific region. They all got together, they all discussed issues, they all discussed ways to further down their cooperation. So this is really important. It's also very important to note that, yes, we do plan to continue on this path, and there will be major events organized by the incoming presidencies in the next year. So we are already in contact with the Czech presidency, with the Swedish presidency, and with the Spanish presidency, so that the Indo-Pacific will remain at the center of the EU's attention, and it will for sure, because Indo-Pacific is an integral part of the EU's policies.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for speaking to WION on the host of subjects: Indo-Pacific, the Ukraine crisis, the war, in fact, in Ukraine, and perhaps we'll see you more in India, even as Indo-Pacific is becoming one of the main tenets, perhaps, of regional discussions and global discussions. Well, that's all.